Morning, good morning, hello, hello. I'm Andrew Jenkins, and this is a short countdown timer to help the various feeds catch up and settle down. And 31st of October today, folks. We say goodbye to the summer. Oh, boo-hoo, but we have...
We can't wait for today's groovy, spectacular Halloween show, folks.
I just love that. We're hanging out with Andrea Pacini today, presentation expert, head of ideas on stage in the UK, and recent author of this wonderful book, The Confident Presenter. Fantastic. And give us a quick wave and hello, Andrea.
Hey, Andrew, Sarah,
Hey.
great to see you both. Great to be back.
Good to be back. Yeah, this is round 2, folks. No video, says Graham Rose. Hopefully the video will come through. So I'll just check in myself to see whether the video's on. Tap to join. Well, I'm hoping it'll come through. Yep, we're through. Yeah, the video's on. Good morning, everyone. Looks like good mornings. Yep, so we've got a few good mornings coming on. We'll come to those in a moment. Morning, Sarah, Mrs. Moderator. How you doing?
I'm doing really well, thank you. Good morning, good morning. Nice.
Good morning.
Round 1 was so good, Andrea. This is why we've got you back for round 2.
Round 2, there we go. Sounds great, says Graham. Right, okay. 115th show, folks, and only 55 sleeps till the big man peeps. Boom, there we go. So with Sarah, Andrea, me, Marketing Sex in the background doing our comments, thank gosh, and that's Tilly. And Ghost, this week's sponsors, that's today's team, folks. Wow, so I think that deserves a quick wow. Wow, there we go. So, oi, oi, people and hi gang, it's Leaders Live. Showtime, folks. Hurrah and huzzah. Don't you just love it? Oh my God, I'm laughing at my own jokes again. And it's just after 8:45 a.m. here in the UK. And we are live with Leaders Live. Spreading the love, folks. Spreading the love. Yabba dabba do. And hope you enjoyed that groovy opener too, gang. And we've got lots of people joining in, so that's great, as I can see on the feed. And this week, we're delighted that we're being powered by Ghost, this week's sponsor, as I said. And look out for who's sponsoring us each week. And and please let us know if our audio is coming through okay. I think it is, so that's fine. And where our videos coming through for Graham, I don't know yet. So if you're new to Leaders Live, a warm welcome to you. And Leaders Live is a dynamic weekly talk show that generates business through networking, through community, through extraordinary conversations that inspire folks. And as I mentioned in the countdown, I'm Andrew Jenkins, and I host this interactive weekly Leaders Live show that's built an awesome community of like-minded leaders just like you listening today. And so don't be shy. We'd love you to introduce yourself, join in, interact with the comments, chat and ask questions too as we go along. And we have 3 simple rules, folks. A safe community, mutual respect, and please no selling in the room. And our motto is I to the power of we. And look, a really easy way that you can join in and support this free show. And boy, do we put a lot of effort in to make this show. It takes about 10 hours a week to make this show work. So it's quite a lot of effort that goes in. You can use the little app called buymeacoffee.com/Leaders Live, all one word, Leaders Live. Buy me 5 and you get a free half-hour coaching session as well, folks. And it looks a little bit like this if I can do a little test. Ta-da, there it is. And you get your name up in lights there. And it's nice to just a bit of fun. All proceeds go to the show, folks. So there we go. And thanks for Mark Nutter for last week's coffee. Brilliant. So smash those likes too, folks, and thumbs up. We'd really appreciate that. Keeps us motivated. Love that bell. So Few, put it all together. What have you got? Yep, you've got it. Bibbidi, poppity, poo. They're laughing at my own jokes again. So let's introduce our round 2. And I hope you like the groovy Ghost and the bats that are moving about the scenes as well. So how you doing, Andrea? Great to have you on the show again. Andrea Pacini, good morning.
I'm good. Good morning. I'm good, Andrew. And yeah, thank you very much again. I very much enjoyed part 1. It was in June, I think, months
Way
ago.
back in July,
yeah.
June, July, somewhere around there. Yeah, I had to look it up myself, actually. Yeah,
I'm looking forward to part 2 of our conversation.
Yeah, and we're picking out themes out of Andrea's book, Confident Presenter, and we've got a treat for you today. So tell us briefly a little bit about yourself, Andrea, and Ideas on Stage UK.
Sure. I'm a presentation coach. As you said, Andrew, I'm the
Mhm.
head of this company called Ideas on Stage UK. I'm in London. And the reason why I'm so passionate about presenting, public speaking, is because when I was a little kid growing up in Italy, I grew up in a family of very small business owners. My
Okay.
parents have always been running their own very small business together. They still do. And
Mm.
so as a kid, I saw their challenges because raising four kids while trying to run a business is not easy. But I also saw their spark, their entrepreneurial mindset, their proactive approach to life. And so
Wow.
that's why I always wanted to be an entrepreneur, to run my own thing.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know about you, Andrew, but for me, that remained a dream for a long time because before
Yeah.
doing what I do now, I tried many things, I started many projects, all of them failed.
Oh.
But it was useful
Mm.
because in that process, what I realized was that there are so many great ideas that fail, not because of the ideas themselves, but just because of the way they are presented.
Okay. Yeah.
And that's why then eventually, to cut it short, I became a presentation coach.
So.
That's why my mission today is to stop great ideas from failing just because of the way they are presented.
Yeah, and isn't that true? You know, we learn through the things that we don't get right that causes pain, and then and failure. And actually, it turns out that man doesn't learn a lot from success. Man learns an awful lot through failure. The trick is just to learn from it and to do something different. My guess is, Andrea. So it's a great story. Thank you. Yeah. Yes.
Absolutely. And I say, yeah, we're talking about failure. In a
Mm.
way, yes. I mean, if something didn't work, it failed. But when I say failure, I don't think of it, I don't give it a negative connotation.
Yeah, indeed. It's just right. What can I learn? Let's now try something different. And if something doesn't work, try again. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's always
like
an
that.
experiment.
Yeah, always. I love that, and actually, that's a great reframe as well, isn't it? So, and to kick us off today, we're talking about the secrets to confident presentations, round two, and we've got a kick-off audience question as well, haven't we, Andrea?
Yeah, I'd be very
Mm.
curious to hear from our audience today.
Mm.
What's the biggest challenge that you faced? If you think about presenting in general, from any perspective, so it could be when you create the content of your presentations, or it could be if you use slides or any kind of visual support, maybe there are some challenges there. Or it could be from a delivery perspective. So you are in front of an audience, it could be in person, it could be online as we are today, Andrew. What
Mm.
are some of the key challenges, or maybe one, the biggest challenge you faced in the past from a presentation perspective?
Okay, thank you, Andrea. And it's in the feed now. So, what's one presentation challenge you face? Thanks, Sarah, for popping in the seed and in the feed. Sorry. And Mrs. Moderator, how you doing? How you doing? Let's bring Mrs.
Doing
Moderator
really
in.
well this morning, thank you. It's good to see so many people online. Graham, I'm chuffed that you've got your video working. If you can't switch it off and on again,
Oh, we had to do that this morning, didn't we?
Oh yes, we did. Yes, we did.
Oh, we had all sorts of things going, and yeah, what's going on in the feed at the moment, Sarah? Anything going on in the feed?
Yeah, lots of. If I can get my feed to work again. Oh, yeah, we're all right.
We're all
yeah,
right.
good morning to nice to have Steve Whittle on. We will be talking about Tough to Talk.
Yes, we will
in a
moment. Yeah.
And yeah, one or two things just to think about whilst you're going to talk about Tough to Talk. Matthias says, great perspective, Andrea. He's met so many tech entrepreneur engineers that have terrific ideas, but they never manage to explain their idea to the common man, which is a shame. They stick too much jargon in and people fall off easily.
Yeah, and there's another key message, isn't it? And in one of the chapters in Andre's book, is like keep your message simple. And actually, that's not simple to do, and it's for it takes skill and practice. My guess. So,
Steve Whittle, fail first attempt in learning.
Love that. Yeah,
love that.
Oh, spot on. That's just brilliant, isn't it? We like that. Ooh. Brilliant. Thank you. Okay.
So, do you want me to talk about some of the challenges, or are we coming back to that in a minute?
You could just bring in a couple more, and then we'll go on to to Steve Whittle's
Well,
charity.
why do we do? We'll do Steve first, and then
Fine.
obviously I will come back to because then
No
it
problem.
leads quite nicely in.
Okie dokie. So, Steve Whittle's online, and Steve is the head of a charity called Tough to Talk. And November is a time where he is really pushing this whole thing about preventing male suicide. So here's his video. So this is a shout out for you, Steve Whittle. Here we go.
Brothers, it's time. Time to unleash the stash. We're not just growing mustaches, we're sparking a revolution. Join us this Movember. Stand tall, speak out. We're fighting against male suicide and the mental health stigma. Your voice, your story, your mustache. It can save lives. Visit toughtotalk.com and follow the instructions to set up your fundraising page. Every penny you raise will go directly to funding men-only suicide intervention courses for men in male-dominated spaces and raising awareness of how to destroy the stigma and save thousands of men's lives, one life at a time.
Brilliant. Yeah, thanks, Steve Whittle. And yeah, I just like that, stand tall, speak out against the mental health stigma of male suicide. And Tough to Talk supports communities and businesses supporting men with their issues, destroying the stigma, talking around about the mental health aspects to reducing male suicide. And Steve's website is www.toughtotalk.com. There we go. So hopefully we can get that in the feed if it's possible. And there we go. So thanks, Steve, for that. And let's bring in our guest again. Where are we? Guest scene. There we go. And just before we begin with Andre, let's just give him a round of applause. There we go. Confetti bomb. We love the confetti bomb. There we go.
No spiders, Andrew. No spiders.
Let's see if we can get rid of the spider for you. There we go. There we are. We'll just have a ghost instead. There we are. And yeah, as you can tell, our theme today is Halloween, obviously. So kick us off, Andrea. Tell us, what is the biggest obstacle that you find that most people face when trying to unleash their inner charisma and confidence in presentations? Take it away for us.
The biggest obstacle is very much connected to what Matthias said in one of his comments. So we're talking about technical people, engineers finding it hard to simplify their message, and this is what I often see. If you think about business owners, business leaders, most people know so much. We often know so much about a subject. We are also so close to it that we think that everything is important. And so we think that we need to communicate everything. We also think, Andrew, that what we are communicating is simple enough for the audience to understand. Often the experience from that perspective is the opposite. It's confusing. Yeah. And in communication, it's very simple. If you confuse, you lose your audience, you lose their attention. I'll give you an example. And this is the number one problem in communication. The Heath brothers, in their fantastic book, To Stick, talk about the course of knowledge as the number one problem in communication. And before I continue, Andrew, can you hear me well?
Yes, we can. Yeah, there was a glitch for a moment, but everything's okay.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So the curse of knowledge, number one problem in communication. In that book, Made to Stick, they talk about a Stanford University study, which is known as Tappers and Listeners. And what happened was that in 1990, a psychology student asked two groups of people to play a game. You had the tappers, and what they had to do was they had to tap out rhythms to famous songs on a table. So think about very famous songs like Happy Birthday to You, songs like that. But instead of singing the songs, they had to tap them out, just the rhythm on a table. And then you had the listeners, another group, and all they had to do was to try and guess the songs. Before the experiment started, the student asked the tappers to estimate how many songs they thought that the listeners would have guessed. And they estimated 50%. So the
Okay.
tappers thought that the listeners would have guessed 50% of the songs, more or less.
Mm.
Now, in reality, things were very different.
Mm.
Listeners only guessed 2.5% of the song.
Wow. 2.5%.
Huge difference.
Yeah.
Why? Because if you are a tapper, you have knowledge that the listeners don't have, the curse of knowledge. If you're a tapper,
Yeah.
you have the songs in your head. And so for you, you find it very hard to understand why the listeners can't guess them.
Mm.
But if you are a listener, you don't have that knowledge. You don't have the songs in your head. So for you, it's very hard. And that's the bottom line. This is what the curse of knowledge is all about. Once we know something,
Mm.
we find it hard to imagine what it means not knowing it. So the curse of knowledge, which is the number one problem in communication, is our inability to imagine what it means knowing what we know. And if you think about it, Andrew, we see that in many communication contexts. You say between presenters and the audiences, of course, but you also say between writers and readers. You wrote 2 books. I've got experience with one. You say between sellers and buyers. You say between politicians and voters. And it's very easy, very, very easy to fall into this trap unless we find a way to get access to some sort of an external perspective. So that's the biggest obstacle I see, the curse of knowledge, the difficulty to imagine what it means knowing what we know, and therefore the difficulty to simplify a message.
Isn't that interesting? Yeah, that whole thing about knowledge bias almost, I'm wondering, the curse of knowledge. Yeah, I like that. So we get biased by thinking, well, everyone should know this, right? So we're starting off with context that we know in our heads as the knowledge sayer, speaker, but which might not be in the heads of our public. So we need to give context and be masters of that, I guess. And actually, you also mentioned something. So I was going to say, well, how do you do that, Andre? And you said, I think, we'll find somebody who can help you to be neutral. Was that something that I would like?
So you want to get access to some sort of an external perspective.
Yeah,
now, of course, working with, for example, working with an expert in this area. That's one way to get that external perspective. It could be, for example, you prepare a presentation. Rather than just keeping it here in your head, then give it before the actual presentation. Try rehearse it in front of colleagues, in front of friends, see what they say, get their feedback. Or today online, it's easy to, even if it's uncomfortable, but we can record ourselves. So rehearse it, record yourself, watch the recording. And that's it's not the same as working with a professional in this space, but at least it's one way of getting an external perspective. Watching yourself will help you become aware of many dynamics that you wouldn't be aware of if you don't do that. And awareness is key. The first step is, if we want to improve our presentation skills, a key step is awareness. First of all, we need to be aware of whether or not we have certain dynamics which are different from best practices. And then once we are aware, of course, it's just a matter of practicing. But if you practice while being aware, it's going to be easier for you to improve.
Yeah. Thanks, Steve Whittle, for 5 coffees. That's such a treat. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Oh, I'm so pleased with that. Thank you. Sorry, that was the buy me a coffee that just came up. I really like what you just said there about the awareness, and then the ability then to put that into play and do something with it. And that whole thing about just asking someone who doesn't know, perhaps. I mean, we did this poll the other day as an example. So this is a poll that we put together for in preparation to you speaking today. In your experience, if you had to pick just one option, what has helped you the most to become a confident presenter? And we've got mastering your presence here, crafting compelling stories, overcoming stage fright, managing imposter syndrome. They all look fairly simple, don't they? And yet, when I showed this to Sarah said, well, what does it mean, managing your presence? And I thought, well, isn't that fairly obvious? And that is a case of, having knowledge, isn't it? And then Sarah didn't have that knowledge and would ask the question, which I think is brilliant. And again, going back to practicing and asking people the question, does this make sense? And, and if they say no, then actually that's really great feedback, isn't it, for you as a communicator?
And talking about language, and then I can share, if you want, I can share my thoughts on these 4 options. But the language we use, again, it's very much connected to what Matthias mentioned at the very beginning. What great communicators do is they use language, words, sentences that a 15-year-old would understand. So
I love that. Yeah.
often what a lot of people do is they use complex language, jargon, acronyms, technical language, industry specific terms that you understand as the presenter, not necessarily the audience. Of course, it always depends on who the audience is and what the context is. But and we do that because we think that if we do that, then we sound smarter and more credible. The opposite is true. Again, if you look at what great communicators do, is they replace complex language with simple language. And simple can be harder than complex. And also, when I say that we need to speak simply, this is not about oversimplifying things. It's not about dumbing things down. It's about finding and using language that everybody can understand. I'll give you a practical example. If you take the introduction of Steve Jobs' presentation when he launched the iPhone, so many years ago.
Great. Yeah, beautiful.
If you take the first 1,000 words, and then you upload them onto an app like Hemingway, the Hemingway app, or Grammarly, those tools that analyze language, then it returns a grade of 8 to 9 years old, which means, believe it or not, that an 8 to 9 years old watches that presentation, at least the introduction, and he or she will be able to understand what he was talking about. That's what great communicators do.
That's what great communicators do. I love that. And I'm going to come back to that, but I just wanted to come on to this poll just for a minute. Isn't it interesting that, we got 33% mastering your presence here, and crafting compelling stories, the next one, and then stage fright and managing imposter syndrome. Any comments on any of those at all?
Yeah. So mastering your presence, this is your delivery skills. Now, for me, your delivery skills are super important, but they're not the most important things. There is something else before that that we need to master. We can talk about it later if there's an interest. Of course, important, but not the most important thing. Now, if I had to pick one option, it's very hard here because we need all of these things.
Indeed.
But yeah, if we need to pick one option, I would say crafting compelling stories. Storytelling is super powerful in communication. Overcoming stage fright. Now, here I'm not a fan of the word overcoming, because, of course, stage fright, we want to try and overcome it. But if we think about in general, public speaking, nerves, anxiety, the aim should not be to overcome it, because we will never be able to do that.
To manage
nerves, nerves, anxiety will always be there. I'm a presentation coach, Andrew. I present all the time. With me and my colleagues, we help our clients to do the same. But before a presentation, I always feel nervous.
Yeah, I do too.
Of course, there are practical things we can do to control those nerves in a positive way, but we will never be able to overcome it entirely. Managing imposter syndrome. Now, interestingly, some time ago, I interviewed for our podcast, the Ideas on Stage podcast, Tara Halliday. She's an expert in imposter syndrome. I'm not an expert here. She would be my go-to person. So if anybody's interested in imposter syndrome, what it is really, because there are a lot of misconceptions and how to. Yeah. So Tara Halliday.
Tara Halliday. Right. Okay. Thank you for that. We'll probably find a link to that a little bit later and pop that in the feed for those of you that are interested. I want to come back to that piece about simplifying your language and dumbing things down. Dumbing down is the wrong word, but keeping the language really simple and precise. Churchill was a master of this, and he used to use the rule of four syllables or less, or 2 syllables or less is around 2 or 3 syllables is perfect for a delivery. Obama would write his speeches for a 12-year-old, and you're dead right. Grammarly is a brilliant tool. to use, because when in the day of blog writing, and I used to write a lot of blogs in 2015 onwards, I was doing blogs because video hadn't been invented, particularly at that point, not like it is today. So I was blogging at that point, and I would always use something like Grammarly to check, because you write complicated stuff, or I've got a tendency to do as an ex-engineer, particularly. And then trying to have the skill to make things really simple in 2 syllables, or 3 syllables, make language really simple, and it just flows so much more readily. And the skill is to create a complex argument in simple language, so everybody can understand it. So your 9-year-old daughter or son in the back of the car can understand it, type of thing.
And the syllable thing is a great tip, Andrew. If there is a short word or a long word and both say the same thing, we should always use the short word. The same is true with sentences. If you can say something with a short sentence, if you can say the same thing with a long sentence, let's use the short sentence. My publisher, Rethink Press, for my book, in their teaching, they say you need to be kind to your readers. And that's one way to do that, using short words, short sentences, short syllables, just a few syllables. Be kind to your readers. We can apply the same principle in public speaking, communication in general. Be kind to your audience. Now, Andrew, you were talking about blogging, writing. I'll give you another practical example. If you take, and this is something I've learned from Carmine Gallo. Some people may know him. He's a world-class communication expert. In his latest book, the Bezos Blueprint, he talks about Jeff Bezos. He analyzed all the, I think it was 25, 20, 30 shareholder letters that Jeff Bezos sent to the Amazon shareholders. And we are talking about, in those letters, business, communication, strategy, technical implementations. So these are the topics.
That's the context.
And if you analyze the language, so again, you do the same exercise with a tool like Grammarly, it returns, for most of them, for 70% of them, it returns a grade which is equivalent to roughly 13 to 15 years old.
Lovely.
So the writing that Jeff Bezos used over his 25 years as CEO of Amazon was working for a 13-year-old.
Perfect.
And again, that's what great communicators do.
Yeah, great. Thank you for that. What a brilliant message. Let's give you a break from it. Mrs. Moderator, what's going on in the feed?
Lots going on in the feed. That spider's back. Was that deliberate?
Try catching it.
That was mean. So, in answer to the question, the presentation challenges you've faced, Matteo says his main challenge is to stay within the allowed time frame.
Yes,
that's a good one.
Ildi,
she presented to 300 people in Hong Kong at an internal corporate event, and she feeds off the feedback from the audience, but Asian audiences behave very differently to European ones. And it was completely silent through stories and jokes. That must have been really difficult.
Interesting. Very interesting. Thank you, Ildi.
Let's have a look. Morning, Nikki Kerr. That's not a name we normally see on the feed, so good morning.
Hello, Nikki.
Presented to the room for over a decade. I'm passionate about active learning and include lots of group activities. The question to you, Andrea, is how do you translate this online?
Oh, great question, Nikki. Go for it.
Yeah. So would you like me to answer Nikki's question or the other people?
Well, both. Let's start with Nikki and then work backwards.
Okay, Nikki, in person versus online. Now, if we think about it, if you want to be able to present well, and when I say present, it could be a training session, a workshop, anytime we communicate something. Now, the skills you need to be able to develop a compelling message. So that's the content of your teaching, of your workshop, of your presentation. You need to be able to illustrate your message effectively, if that's useful. And you also need to, normally we do that with PowerPoint slides or any other kind of visual support. It could be a whiteboard, flip chart. So that's the visual element. And then you also need to be able to deliver your message in a way that's comfortable and convincing. Now, if we think about it, then all of these things can be applied really well in an online context as well. Now, I'm not saying that a face-to-face presentation is exactly the same as an online presentation. No, there are some key differences. One is, for example, the fact that online it's harder to keep the audience's attention high. And this is connected to another comment around audiences feedback. So we need to be able to interact with the audience even more online. When it comes to exercises, groups, you can do that on Zoom, for example. Many other tools, you can create breakout rooms. We do that all the time. You can also work in real time. You can use technology like very simple tools like Google Documents to ask them to work on some exercises, and you see what, as a trainer, you can see what they're doing in real time. So technology today allows us to replicate a lot of dynamics, of course, in a different way, but the experience would be similar in terms of outcome. Now, connecting this to the second question about Asian audiences, their feedback, this is a fact. So sometimes we can only control what we can control. One thing that helps them is interacting with them, but making it very easy for them to interact. So rather than sharing something and then you say, and I don't know, I think it was ELD or maybe somebody else, I don't remember, and I don't know what happened there, but often I see presenters presenting something and they say, okay, do you have any questions, or what do you think? And that's it. And then so it's very open-ended. Whereas if you create moments of interaction where you make it very easy for people to answer, it could be a yes or no question, which is, of course, it has to be connected to the point you're getting across. Then it's very easy for people to do that. So you want to make it easy for people to interact with you. And
Hands
again, that
up
could be
type thing.
as
Yeah.
just a yes or no question, hands up, things like that.
Okay.
And then I think it was Matthias time frame. So he was talking about, I find it hard to be on time, to respect the time given to me. Now, here is a practical tip for you. Always plan to finish your presentations within maximum 90% of the time you've been given or you've set for yourself. So, for example, if you have a 30-minute presentation to give, what most people do is they plan for most people don't plan at all. So they just go and hope for the best. Yeah.
Hope isn't a good strategy.
Exactly, never.
Yeah.
Now, many other people plan for 30 minutes. But then if you plan for 30 minutes, it's very likely that you will go long because of maybe the technology doesn't work, you need to fix something, or maybe that there is audience interaction that you didn't expect more than what you expected, which is good. So you will go long. If you plan for maximum, it could be even less than that. 90% of the time you have, that will help you find you will have that buffer that you need in case the projector fails or technology fails or you've got the interaction from the audience.
Buffer. I like that. So build a buffer into your presentation stuff. I really, really like that. We're going to move on to another question in a minute, but I just want to bring in Mrs. Moderator again, just give you a quick break. Sarah.
Yeah, a little bit more. I'm not even
I'm okay with the spider for now.
I'll see if I can get rid of the spider.
Maria Jeffers says, for me, she easily goes off point. She overthinks things and then worries about forgetting facts.
Yeah.
And she understands it isn't really important, as it's the energy we transmit that is more powerful.
Thanks, Maria. Just trying to find that comment.
Let's have a look. So Steve Whittle mentioned fear is his hurdle. Needs to own the stage, ignite a dialogue, particularly when talking about such a delicate subject. So that is Steve, and let's have a look. Ildi, the comments and the conversation around what she said. She says she loves the fact that we were talking about nerves on the poll, and that you'll never overcome them. That gives her so much more space to allow her to practice rather than to expect herself to be in control.
Yeah, I mean, I've presented for years, and whenever I've gone on stage, there's always that fear of well, fear's the wrong word, but you just get those nerves, don't you? Those butterflies. But in some ways, that's just great because it just, I recognise that as right, I've got an important message to give here. Yes, there's some natural tendencies to be fearful, and we'll come to Andrea in a minute for his take on this. But the message is more, for me, the way I overcome that is the message is more important for me to deliver than me sort of forgetting my words or something happening, that it doesn't matter if that happens, but, just allowing myself to think, okay, this is important, and it will come right in the end, even though I'm feeling very, very sort of butterflyish at the moment. What say you, Andrea?
Yeah. And Ildi's, Maria's, Steve's comments or questions are all interconnected. So Steve talks about fear. Again, we talked about it. We will always have fear. Mark Twain, apparently, you've got these quotes that he said this, he said that. I don't know if he ever said it, but he makes a point. Apparently, he said that there are only two types of speakers: those who get nervous and those who are liars. So, Steve, if you feel fear, if you are nervous, and again, this is for Maria as well, for Ilde, you are not alone. Again, I'm a presentation coach. I feel nervous all the time before presenting.
Right.
So that's something that we need to recognize and accept. And now, what can we do about it? And this is, so there are practical things we can do, plus there is the most important thing, which also is connected to Maria's comment about forgetting words. Now, a few practical things. One is drinking water. So often when we've got anxiety or nerves, then often the consequence is that it creates a bit of a dry mouth. So make sure that you always have some water with you. And during a presentation, you have it too, Andrew. It's okay to have a sip of water and to avoid a dry mouth. Movement is also powerful. When we are nervous, that causes a lot of energy in excess that flows through our body. You want to take and get some of the energy out. One way to do that is to move before a presentation. Stand up, even if you're at home or in your office, stand up, have a quick walk rather than waiting for your turn. You can also, we were talking about including moments of interaction.
Yeah.
Include a moment of interaction at the very beginning of your presentation. What that does is, so it could be asking a question connected to the theme of your talk. And that puts the focus away from you as the presenter and back to the audience. So that's another practical thing that we can do. And then the other thing, which is the most important thing, is, Andrew, you told me before going live that the chapter you liked the most in my book is the chapter on the importance of rehearsing.
Yes, indeed.
And that's the most thing we can do if we want to not overcome but control public speaking anxiety. And Maria, again, this will help with forgetting words as well. We need to rehearse. And when I say rehearse, a lot of people tell me, Andrew, that they do rehearse, but in reality, if I go a little bit deeper, I realize that that's not the case. A lot of people, what they do is they practice. And practicing means that they think about what to say.
But it's not come out their mouth.
Yeah, exactly. So they think about what to say. Maybe they've got some slides. They go through their slides and they say, okay, here I'm going to talk about this. Here I'm going to talk about that. And then as they do, they realize that maybe something is not quite right. They go back and change it. That's a practice session, which is useful, but it's not enough. We need to rehearse. And rehearsing means repeating your presentation out loud, not in your head, from the very beginning to the very end without stopping, as if there is a real audience in front of you. Again, that's what great presenters do. We need to rehearse. Maria, this will help you not forget words. But I should also say, presenting should not be an exercise in memorization.
Exactly.
So, Maria, you don't have to, when I say that you need to rehearse and you need to do it several times, yes, but you don't need to memorize your presentations. You need to internalize them, which is different. You need to own your content without necessarily memorizing. And then, for example, if you want to have some notes, some cue cards, or again, depending on the context, that's okay. Presenting is not an exercise in memorization.
Totally love that. a presentation isn't an exercise in memory. That's really great. And there's some tips around for getting words too that we can talk about. Maybe we'll have time for that a little bit later. Might come back to that because that might be useful for people. But listen, I mean, there's so much going on here, and it's great that we've had some practical tips about handling nerves, rehearsal, stand up, deliver it from start to finish. Don't stop, but don't just do it in your head. Do it. It's coming out your gob. That's a technical term for coming out your mouth. And keep your message really simple, folks. Those are some of the sort of three bits that we've been talking about so far, just as a quick summary. And just sort of thinking about engaging conversations, because we're kind of moving into that whole area. How do we strike that balance between, conveying a powerful message and making the audience feel like the hero of the story?
Great point, Andrew. Making the audience the hero of the story. Now, there's another mistake that I often see, which is the opposite of making the audience the hero of the story. Whether we are aware of it or not, what most presenters do is they make themselves the hero of the story. And we need to do the opposite. Whatever we say, our communication, our message, our idea has to be relevant to the audience, and it has to be about the audience. Now, let's make it practical, Andrew. I'm going to give you an example here. Let's say that, for example, you are presenting to a potential client, and you want to use a case study that shows that the idea that you are communicating, the framework, the insight, the product service that you are communicating, that you want to sell, that you've done it with somebody else, with another client. So you want to use a case study. Rather than making it about you, and that's what most people do, this is what we've done, this is what we achieved, we want to make it about them, about the client in this case. I'll give you another book. Donald Miller, in his great book, Building a Story Brand, he talks about this idea of the fact that you are not the hero of the story. The client is the hero of the story.
Absolutely.
Your audience is the hero of the story. So how can we do that in practice? I'll give you a framework that people can follow. 4 steps. Setting, complication, turning point, resolution. That's how you should structure your case studies, or even better, I like to call them success stories of success. Setting, complication, turning point, resolution. Let me explain quickly. So setting could be as simple as time and place. So Andrew, I could say, for example, last year we worked with client ABC in London. Last year, London, time and place. That's it. As soon as you start with time and place, the audience knows that you are about to tell them a story, that you are about to give them an example. So it could be as simple as that.
So
setting, time and place. Then complication. And this is the key. The complication is the complication from the perspective of the client, not yours. You are not the hero of the story. So this is the challenge, the problem, the difficulty, the issue that your client was facing before they met you. So you see, you put the client at the center. Yes. Then turning point, this is where you come along. But as Miller says in his book, you come along not as the hero, but as a guide. Your role is the role of a guide that gives the hero, the client, a plan, a process, an insight, an idea, a framework, a product, a service, whatever your context is, that helps them solve that complication and achieve success, and you get to the resolution. But again, that's another key, the resolution. So yes, in the turning point, you have an opportunity to explain what you've done with the end, but then in the resolution, you want to put I think I froze. I'm not sure, but I saw something here. But in the resolution, again, this is the resolution, the success from the perspective of the client, not yours. This is not what you've done, what you've achieved. This is what they achieved. This is what they've done. That's their outcome. So you want to put a spotlight on the success of your clients. It's not about you, it's about them. And that's what I mean by making the audience, in this case, I give you an example of a client, making the client the hero of the story.
I like that. So the spotlight it's not about you, folks. You're not in the spotlight. The spotlight is your audience, or the story you're telling about a client that relates to the audience. So it's not about you. That's
Andrew,
Yeah.
at this point,
Mm.
if you think about it, if we do that,
Mm.
then what happens? Well, indirectly, your potential client in this example will think that if this other company or if this other client has achieved their resolution, their success, their outcome, of course, it's thanks to you.
Yeah, of course.
But
But you're not
but
the
you are,
story. You're not the hero, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
and you are
Yeah.
getting the message across
Mm.
in a much more elegant way.
Mm. Yeah, I love that. And thanks, Tilly, for putting the summary in that. Setting, time and place, complication, turning point, resolution, making the client the hero of the story. There's a massive point there. Thank you. Let's just give you a quick break. Mrs. Moderator, pick us up where we are in the feed. There's loads going on.
There is loads going on. Yeah, first of all, great. What can we remind people? What is the title of Andrea's book and how do they get it, please?
There it is. Confident presenter. It's the wrong way around here, but yeah. We're going to come to that as a CTA, and that will all be in the.
Okay, so keep listening, Graham, please.
Keep listening. Yep, we'll come to that in the feed in a while, so don't worry, that's coming. Confident presenter. It's on Amazon. Great book. I've read it. It's brilliant.
Andy Gray says he finds it. This is no surprise for those of you who know Andy. He finds it useful to build a mind map. Keeps him to time and finds once he's done the mind mapping, it's locked in. Then practices out loud in the car, speaking too slowly because when he gets nervous, that'll be about the right pace.
Yeah, and Andy Gray told me about just have a clock in front of you, and so you know where you are with time, because I lose track of time very easily.
Not just any clock, a great
big clock, yeah, with great big numbers on it. You can see the time.
Big numbers, very visual is our Andy.
Very visual. Thanks, Andy. Brilliant. Anything else you want to pick up?
No, I think. Oh yes, Rebecca says.
Hello, Rebecca.
Thank you for the tip retiming. How critical is humour?
Oh. Oh. How critical is humour, Andrea?
Yeah. Okay. So Rebecca, by the way, great to see you, Rebecca.
Yeah.
And how critical is humor? Now, humor is super powerful in communication. However, so first of all, somebody else earlier was talking about jokes. Humor is not about telling jokes. Two different things. Humor is very important. However, if it doesn't come naturally to you, because we are not stand-up comedians, if it doesn't come naturally to you, then if it does, great, then feel free and go ahead. It's super powerful. If it doesn't come natural to you, then it's okay. What you can do, Rebecca, for example, you could use somebody else's material. So if there is I want to give you practical examples today. If you want to communicate an idea, if you can find an image, a funny image, which of course is connected to the point you want to get across, that's one simple way to include humor in your presentation. You just use somebody else's material. In this case, it's somebody else's image, which is funny and it's connected to your point. And that's one way to include humor. A similar technique is to include a quote. So if somebody said something funny, which makes people laugh, as long as that quote, that sentence is connected to the point you want to get across, that's another way to include humor. So and this is something that everybody can do. We can use somebody else's material as long as it's connected to what we want to get across. Yeah. And Andy was talking about speaking slowly. The mind map, I don't know. I think it was still Andy, the mind map. Yes. So a mind map, there are different ways of mind mapping. I'm a big fan. A very simple mind map, because sometimes when we think about mind mapping, a lot of people think, well, what is this? It's complex. It doesn't have to be complex. There are different approaches. One very simple one is having a mind map, which means identifying your 3 key messages, making it very clear, first of all, for your mind as the presenter, and then as a consequence, it will be clearer for the audience as well. What are the 3 most important things you want to get across? 3 is a very powerful number in communication. And so a mind map could be as simple as, okay, message 1, this is what I want to get across. Message 2, that's my second one. Message 3, that's it. And then Andy was also talking about slowing down, and it's true. I would say, and it is true that when we are nervous, so we are connecting the dots today, we tend to go faster.
Yeah.
For me, Andy, I would take it a step further. It's not really about the challenge I see, the mistake I see is not really about speaking too fast for most people, but it's that most people don't pause enough.
Don't pause enough. Some silence, some pauses.
Yeah.
Ah.
You use the word silence, Andrew.
Mm.
Now, Dale Carnegie said that
Oh, yeah.
silence is one of the most eloquent things in the world.
Mm.
And I love that, because you have silence and eloquence, and it looks like a contradiction because eloquence is all about speaking, but it's not. Silence is one of the most eloquent things in the world, which means that you can say a lot without saying anything.
How beautiful is that? Yeah.
When you pause, say for example before or after a key message, and you want to pause, say for a couple of seconds, no more, 3 benefits. Number 1, you give your audience time to think about what you've just said. You give them time to digest your
To
message.
digest it. Yeah.
Second benefit, you give yourself, as the presenter, time to think about what to say next, what to do next, what to show next. And then third one is, when you pause, say before or after an important point, that increases the impact of that point. So if you have an important message you want to get across, if you rush it, if you speak too fast, it won't be as impactful for the audience. Whereas if you give your audience the message and then you pause, that increases the impact of what you've just said. Of course, if the message you're getting across is stupid and then you pause, that increases the stupidity of what you said. So we need to be careful. But provided that the message is solid, then pausing is very powerful. Let me just mention one final thing, Andrew, because Andy's comment was very much on point. He said that you want to speak much slower when you rehearse in the car, for example, much slower than what you would do in the real presentation, because that will help you find the right balance. This is true. And I would say I would do that with posing. An exercise that people can do when they rehearse, every time you think you are rehearsing, when you think that it would be a good idea to pose before or after an important message, try and exaggerate that pose. And you can do that by thinking about a word of your choice. So your word, Andrew, could be leaders live. That could be the word. And so when you want to pose, you just say in your head leaders live 3 times. So you're saying that you are rehearsing, and then you pause, leaders live, leaders live, leaders live, and then you continue your presentation. Now, if you say a word 3 times, of course you are exaggerating the pose. That's not what you want to do in the real presentation, but exaggerating is an important exercise, because if you don't, and if you're not used to it, in the real situation, because of the adrenaline and those dynamics, nerves, you will lose the pose. Whereas if you exaggerate it as a rehearsal exercise, that will help you find the right balance in the real situation.
Yeah, I like that. So, folks, pause for impact. Beautiful. Leaders live, leaders live, leaders live. But not in the real sense that you do that when you're practicing, right, is what you said. Let's quickly go to Mrs. Moderator and give you a pause for a moment and let the audience catch up a bit. Sarah.
Yeah, a little bit more from Andy, actually. Andy's a graphic recorder.
Yes.
And he helps to build humour in, to lock the ideas in. Since when he was a teenager, he learnt from a regular speaker that when they're laughing, they're learning. So he started watching comedians who told stories who could hold the stage.
And the secret to comedy?
Timing.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah, and he just goes on to say about slowing pace and using. He said he was listening to Bishop the other day, and he was emphasising absolutely everything.
Everything?
And it was really, really hard to follow.
Yeah.
So it sounds to me, it's pace, it's timing, it's pausing, it's don't emphasize everything.
And emphasizing
because
has its
if
place.
because
Yeah.
if everything is important, then nothing is important.
So there should be three things that are important, really, I suppose. Taking your previous comment, having three
But this is
messages
also
powerful.
within the same sentence or the same paragraph or section of the presentation. Then Andy is talking about changing a voice, changing the way we use a voice. And I remember, Andrew, in part one of our conversation before going live, we were talking about your work from a voice perspective, and it's super powerful. So we can, yes, change the way we use a voice to make a message more dynamic. We have to become dynamic vocal speakers. Everybody in the audience likes dynamism, which means that instead of sounding monotone, we have, all of us, we have our own monotone, we have our own standard tone, and that's boring. So anything we can do to move away from time to time from our monotone will help you become a more dynamic vocal speaker. Again, I don't want to give theory, I want to make it practical. So how can we do that? The trick is to make it pop from time to time. If there is a word or a sentence that you want to emphasize, make it pop. How can you do that? You can, for example, you can punch the most important words. Now, Andrew, I'm punching the word punching. You can punch the most important words. You can make some words longer. Now I'm making the word longer. You emphasize it. You can over articulate certain words. This is very useful for people like me. Like, for example, I speak English, which is obviously not my first language. So often we need to not just articulate, we need to remind ourselves, and I need to do it myself as well, to over articulate, especially if the word is not easy. So you can over articulate. Now I'm over articulating the word over articulating.
Beautiful.
You can also, so Andy was talking about going down in volume. Yes. So you can go up in volume if you want to emphasize something, and you can achieve the same benefit for the audience by going down in volume. Why? Because anyway, you are moving away from your standard tone. So the bottom line is this: you want to become a dynamic vocal speaker. Anything you can do to move away from your standard tone, because otherwise it becomes a monotone, from time to time will help you do that.
Beautiful. So I like the way you've mentioned punch, longer, and also change tone and over articulate some words just to kind of emphasize that word, folks. And talking about I'm just looking at time and just thinking, gosh, time is going on and we're almost at the top of the hour. Let me introduce your call to action here. Here is this is for Graham, but I think it's already been in the feed. Thank you, Tilly, for popping this in the feed. This is Andrea Bassini's book, Confident Presenter. Great book, really easy to read, really clear, some lovely chapters. You can work through it really quickly on a train, a plane, or automobile if you're not driving. And if you can read while you're actually traveling, fantastic. It's a great book, so I highly recommend it. The link is in the feed already, but we'll pop it in again. And so that's that. And then your website is here, which is, I'm just coming to that now, is ideasonstage.com, all one word. And there's a scorecard here for you as well, which you can take a score and test yourself on your presentation score. It's a lovely little tool. It's free. It's just use it and just have a look at your own presentation score and the stuff that we've looked at today. And you've got something to apply straight away to keep it really practical. And you've got some information straight away. And you've also got a little a gift for us as well, Andrea. Do you want to shout that out for us?
Yeah, and thank you for the opportunity, Andrew. And for people who are interested in the scorecard, then either on the website you can find it, or ideasonstage.com/score, like when
Here
you
it
score a
is.
goal.
Yeah,
I see the link in the chat. Yeah. And now the other thing is that if you are interested in these ideas, presentation skills, public speaking, if you want to become a more confident presenter, I would be very happy to offer a complimentary totally free consultation. I can do that for 5 people. And the consultation would be an opportunity for both of us to understand if there is a fit between what you may be looking for in this area and what we do when we work with our clients. But I can give you more information if you're interested. All you need to do is just send me an email. My email address, I think, will be in the chat. Otherwise, Andrea.Pacini, it's there, perfect, at ideasonstage.com. Just send me an email. If you can make it very simple, you just, even a blank email with the subject line Leaders Live consultation, so I know you are coming from this show, and that's it. If you send me an email, I will get in touch with you. I will give you more information about what the consultation is about, and then if together we decide that it makes sense to go ahead, then we'll go ahead and find the time to speak.
Lovely. There you go. So first 5, or just 5 people for Andrea. So there you go. There's an opportunity for you. Thanks very much for an enlightening, fantastic, extraordinary Leaders Live conversation this morning as our hangout guest. We've loved having you. Sounds like we've got a round 3, and we've even got some content for it as well. So look out for round 3 coming up, maybe by the end of the year and before Christmas, hopefully. But Andrea's a busy man, so we'll see what we can do for a round 3. Folks, it's been great to hang out with you today and great to hang out with everybody here. Quick shout out from Sarah for Leaders Live. Sarah?
Yep, just a reminder, if you've enjoyed it, tell all your friends. Let's try and expand the community, because the more of us that are on here, the more interactive we get. If there's anything in particular that you would like us to talk about, get in touch with us. And just a final reminder, there's a lot of things we've talked about. Do reach out to Andrea, because I've found today so interesting. But Andrew also does a lot of coaching, personal skills stuff. So yeah, get in touch with us. We do like to hear from people.
Yeah, and keynote speaking. So very happy to do that if you're looking for somebody to do that with you. So that's a little bit about us. And the goose for next week, folks, very quickly, because we're running out of time now, is we've got a great treat. We've got a breakfast-style show coming up again, how to access and enhance the power of your intuition. We've got the Reverend Andy Gray, who's been on today, Ilda, who's been on today, and Dr. Ian Price as well, talking about intuition and, what is it? How do we access it? How do we use it? And we're going to have a great discussion around that, and it's going to be real fun. So here's our outro closer, and that's all for now. See you again next week, folks. And in the meantime, God bless, and may God's love shine on you all this week. We're going to wave to you from our outro closer. Sorry we're slightly late. Cheers for now. Bye-bye. Cheers, everybody. And thanks again for Andrea for a wonderful show. Just so much packed information in that show. Wonderful stuff. Thank you very much. And we'll see you again next week. And I hope you can apply all of those things we've learned today in your business. And we'll have another awesome, groovy show next week. Bye for now. Cheers for now. Thank you very much. Bye-bye, everybody.